She screamed in my face at 6 in the morning, in the middle of a blizzard, threatening to fine me $500 a day for clearing snow off my own driveway. What she didn't know was that she was standing on my land when she did it. I'm Marcus Kellerman, 58 years old, retired land surveyor, and the woman waving legal papers in my face had just made the biggest mistake of her life. Let me take you back to where this started. 15 winters ago, after my wife Sarah died of cancer and left me with a grief so heavy I could barely breathe, I found the one thing that kept me going, firing up my snowblower at 6 in the morning and clearing every single driveway in this neighborhood, for free, every day, without being asked. Mrs. Henderson, who couldn't grip a shovel because of her arthritis. The Martinez family, whose twins couldn't even reach the back seat of the car over the drifts. Old Bill's golden retriever, who started showing up at my driveway every morning expecting a treat from the crazy neighbor working before sunrise. 15 years, 0 complaints. Then she arrived. Priscilla Thornfield moved into Willowbrook Estates in the summer of 2020 like she was invading a country. White Tesla, UC Berkeley law degree, a smile that made you want to check your pockets. Within 60 days, during a Zoom meeting half the neighbors couldn't figure out how to join, she got herself elected HOA president. And she wasted no time. Mrs. Henderson's 40-year-old rose garden, non-conforming landscaping. Bill's vintage pickup, eyesore. My snowblower sitting inside my own garage, unapproved outdoor equipment storage apparently. Every morning she took her power walk in designer workout clothes that had never seen actual exercise, photographing violations with military precision. My coffee mug left on my front step. My Christmas lights still up on January 16th. My sprinklers running 60 seconds past optimal hours. She sent monthly newsletters on cardstock so thick you could build furniture with it, written in legal language designed to make grown adults feel like criminals for living in their own homes. She didn't see a neighborhood, she saw a kingdom, and she treated the people who'd lived here for decades like subjects who needed to be educated. So that December morning, when she stomped up my driveway in $1,000 boots, waving a cease and desist letter and screaming that I was waking the whole neighborhood, I turned off the snowblower. I looked at her, and I let her finish. Then I said, very calmly, "This is my property, Priscilla, completely legal." She looked me dead in the eye and said, "And I will never forget this. You're just a grumpy old man who doesn't understand modern rules." She turned around and walked away. That was the last time she had the upper hand in this story. 48 hours later, she filed a formal noise complaint with Jefferson County Code Enforcement, citing Municipal Ordinance 847.3, excessive noise during restricted hours. By Thursday, she'd organized what she called the Peaceful Morning Coalition, which was really just herself, 2 other California transplants, and Cranky Bill, who'd switched sides after she promised to ignore his truck. They launched a whole next-door campaign called Protecting Our Children's Sleep, and attached Ring doorbell footage of my 6:15 a.m. operation like it was evidence in a murder trial. The comments exploded. Mrs. Henderson posted photos of her snow-free driveway. The Martinez family shared videos of their twins playing safely, but Priscilla's side hit back with decibel readings and property value studies. Here's what 32 years navigating municipal bureaucracy will do for you. I went to the county planning office and looked up Ordinance 847.3. Buried in the fine print, the part that a UC Berkeley law degree apparently skipped. The 7 a.m. restriction only applies to non-essential recreational activities. Essential property maintenance is protected from 6 a.m. onward under Colorado's Property Maintenance Code. My snowblower isn't a toy. It's a legally protected maintenance tool, same as a roofer starting work at dawn. The complaint was dismissed in 24 hours. But while I was pulling those county records, I noticed something in the subdivision planning files. Something about Oak Street that didn't line up with the numbers in my grandfather's 1950s survey map sitting in my basement. I went home that night and set up his old Leica theodolite in the front yard. And what that precision instrument showed me stopped me cold. Oak Street, the road every single person in this neighborhood drives on twice a day, ran directly across 40 feet of land that had never been sold, never condemned, never legally transferred to public use. Every neighbor, every delivery driver, every school bus, every morning commute, all of it crossing Kellerman family land without permission for 15 years. And Priscilla's Tesla was on it right now, creeping past my property with her phone pressed against the passenger window, photographing my quote suspicious surveying activity. The woman trying to destroy my property rights was literally trespassing on my property to do it. I pulled my grandfather's original deed that night and spread it across my workbench. Yellowed paper, 1950s typewriter ink, and buried inside the legal language. A single phrase that made my coffee go cold. Reserving unto grantor perpetual access rights to the western 40-foot strip. He hadn't just sold the farm to developers. He had kept the road. I called Danny Kowalski the next morning. 30 years of property law. Old army buddy. He was at my kitchen table within an hour. He read the deed. He went completely silent for 3 minutes. And then, barely above a whisper, he said, "Marcus, do you understand what this means? When Apex Development went bankrupt in 2009, those reserved rights never transferred to the city or the homeowners. They came straight back to me. That road was built across my private property without compensation, without permission, without a single legal easement ever being recorded." Then Danny told me something that made everything click into place. Priscilla Thornfield had 3 prior ethical violations on her California law license, all involving property disputes. All involving deliberately misrepresenting ownership. She had done this before, in other states, to other people. This was never a neighborhood dispute. This was a predator who had picked the wrong target. While I was quietly building my case, she was escalating. An emergency HOA board meeting with a 23-slide presentation about me, including what my neighbor Mrs. Henderson described as a psychological profile that would make a therapist cringe. Priscilla told the board I was exhibiting grief-related mental health episodes, weaponizing Sarah's death to paint me as an unstable widower who needed community intervention. She wanted every household to pay $200 into a legal fund to shut down my snowblowing. The vote failed, 4-3. The people who actually knew me showed up, so she called the police. A wellness check. Deputies at my front door claiming my erratic surveying behavior indicated possible cognitive decline. After 15 minutes, they drove away, closing the case with a note that I was clearly competent and functioning independently. Then Channel 9 news arrived. A reporter named Jessica Finley sold a story about a grieving old man who'd lost the plot and was terrorizing his neighborhood. I invited her in for coffee and laid grandfather's survey map across the kitchen table. 20 minutes later, she left with photographs of every document and a completely different story forming in her mind. Then came Priscilla's law firm with a cease and desist. Then came Colorado Attorney General investigators after she filed an elder fraud complaint against me. Closed as unfounded, but now officially documented on her record. Then came a private investigator at my door asking sympathetically about my grief and my mental state. I handed him business cards for my doctor, my financial advisor, and my veterans counselor. "Be my guest," I told him. Then I bought a gate. 12-ton hydraulic steel barrier, 1/4-inch plate steel, posts anchored 3 feet into Colorado clay. The retired Marine at the gate company looked at my specifications and said, "This isn't coming down without heavy equipment." That's the idea. County permit approved in 1 hour, completely legal. Installed on a Saturday. By Monday morning, Priscilla had a building inspector at my front door. He spent 45 minutes checking documentation that confirmed every single thing was perfectly fine, muttered under his breath that someone really doesn't want this gate here, and drove away. Then she convinced a second judge, one who had never seen the full property history, to issue an emergency injunction on a Friday evening with only her side represented. The order demanded I open the gate immediately. The next morning, I found fresh survey stakes on my property. Her people had been on my land overnight without permission, trying to challenge my boundary claims. Then she showed up at my front door with news cameras, 2 city council members, and a crowd of frustrated neighbors demanding I comply immediately. I said 3 words, consulting my attorney, and closed the door. That's when we scheduled the public hearing. The community center was packed, standing room only, news cameras in the back. Priscilla took the podium like a prosecutor delivering a closing argument. Professional displays, charts, testimony from parents, fire chief response time concerns, a real estate agent with property value projections. This is about an elderly man using legal technicalities to hold an entire neighborhood hostage over a snowblowing complaint. The applause was real. Half the room had already decided I was the villain. Then it was my turn. I walked up with 1 manila folder. "Before we talk about community welfare," I said, "everyone should understand exactly whose property we're discussing." I held up grandfather's 1950 deed. I laid out the chain of title, the bankruptcy filings, the planning documents, the gap between what 47 families had been promised and what was actually recorded under law. For 15 years, every single one of you has been crossing my private property twice a day. The road you drive to work on, the road the school bus takes, the road Priscilla used to deliver her legal threats, was never legally transferred from my family. Not once, not ever. The room went silent. Priscilla jumped up. The city maintains that road. It's on every municipal map. Municipal maps can be wrong, I said. Property deeds cannot. Then Danny stood up. 3 days ago, we filed formal notice with the Jefferson County District Attorney's Office. Mrs. Thornfield obtained her emergency injunction by telling a judge that Oak Street was public property. She knew from our prior correspondence that this was false. Filing documents with known falsehoods is perjury under Colorado law. The Attorney General's office has opened a criminal investigation. Priscilla's face went the color of fresh snow. I returned to the microphone one final time. I'm prepared to sell legal easement rights to this entire community for $1. 3 conditions. Priscilla resigns from the HOA board immediately. The harassment of longtime residents stops permanently. And we create a community fund for neighborhood maintenance. Because apparently, some people need reminding what good neighbors actually do for each other. Mrs. Henderson started clapping first. The easement was signed within 48 hours. Priscilla's resignation arrived that weekend. A short note about career opportunities that fooled nobody. Her Tesla was gone 3 days later. A moving truck followed. Some neighbors said they saw her crying while directing the movers. I didn't feel satisfied by that. She had destroyed herself with her own choices. That's not a victory, that's a consequence. Her law license was suspended 3 months later. It became public record. The new HOA board elected Mrs. Henderson president. Their first official act was creating the Sarah Kellerman Memorial Community Fund, $25 per household per month. The first project, a memorial garden at the exact spot on Oak Street where this whole thing began. Roses, benches, a small plaque that reads, "In memory of neighbors who serve neighbors." The gate stays open permanently now, but it's still there as a daily reminder that the paper you sign when you buy a house matters, that property rights are real, and that people who've served a community for 15 years deserve a little more than a cease and desist letter at 6 in the morning. Every winter I still fire up the snowblower at first light, but now the Martinez teenagers handle the younger families. Mrs. Henderson trained 3 retirees. Even Cranky Bill came out last February with an old shovel, muttering about doing his part. Priscilla wanted to teach an old man about modern rules. All she did was remind an entire neighborhood about the oldest rule there is. Take care of your neighbors, and your neighbors will take care of you.